Good morning. We're in the historic English town of Rye today. Rye is in East Sussex and it's about 2 miles inland from the sea. We'll come back to that in a minute. We're starting our walk in Mermaid Street. You may have seen the short video that I made walking down Mermaid Street. Well, today we're walking up the street. This is the most famous street in Rye and, as I said in the previous video, it's probably the most photographed street in England. It wasn't always as picturesque as this. In fact, less than 100 years ago it was a very run-down area. Rye is one of the Cinque Ports. This was a loose confederation of harbour towns created in the 11th century to help to defend southern England from attack, which in those days was mainly by the French. On the left now we're passing the Mermaid Inn. For many years this was a haunt of smugglers, and it's renowned for its ghosts. We didn't meet any while we were there though. The most famous event in Rye's long history came in 1377, when the French burnt the town to the ground and destroyed most of its timber buildings. They also stole the bells of St Mary's Church. The following year, a revenge voyage saw the bells returned, along with other previously stolen loot. Coming up on our right is Lamb House, which is now owned by the National Trust. This has been visited by many famous writers and was home to the American writer Henry James for 17 years before the First World War. Ahead of us now is St Mary's Church, of stolen bells fame. We'll come back to the church later, but now we'll walk along the side of the churchyard, past these beautiful timbered houses, and down to what was the old city walls. It's early in the morning, which is why we haven't met many people. You can see that the sun is coming up, and I'm afraid my GoPro doesn't deal with the backlighting very well. The dark building in front of us is Rye Castle, otherwise known as Ypres Tower. Here's a clearer photo that I took yesterday. The castle is now home to Rye Museum. We'll continue on past the castle and through the archway in front of us. This opens up onto what's called the gun garden. The guns were part of the town's defences, but why were they placed so far from the sea? Nope, no sea there. The answer is that when the castle and town walls were built, the land in front of us wasn't there. This was a huge harbour. Ships sailed right up to this point. So what happened? A series of huge storms in the 13th century cut Rye off from the sea and altered the course of the River Rother. Shingle was pushed up on the coastline and the harbour gradually silted up, creating marshland. By the 16th century the marsh had become useful for grazing of livestock. Rye was still a port, but only those ships that could navigate up the river were able to reach the town. And that's how the port of Rye finds itself 2 miles away from the sea. We'll walk back up to St Mary's Church. Those of you who've seen any of my other town walks know that I like to pay my respects at the War Memorial. Rye's War Memorial is here, outside of St Mary's Church. We'll come back to the church, but first let's have a look at the land gate. Originally Rye had 4 gates, but this is the only one that has survived. It was built in 1329, so it'll soon be 800 years old. This road leads us up into the High Street. Although not a pedestrianised area, there isn't too much traffic, and there's some really interesting shops and buildings here. We've turned off of the High Street now, and we're heading back towards the church. I wanted to approach the church this way to show you the clock. This clock was installed in the 16th century, and it's one of the oldest church turret clocks in the country which is still functioning. The clock face that we see here was added in 1760. The clock is unusual because it strikes the quarter hours, but not the hours. We'll go inside the church now. And this is the impressive pendulum of the clock, swinging inside the church. We're climbing up the bell tower now, and this is the first level. We're behind the clock face, and these are the workings of the clock. The bell ropes are tied to the ceiling to stop people trying to ring the bells. We'll climb up to the next level where we can see the bells. There are 8 bells here, but they aren't the ones that were stolen by the French. The bells here were cast in 1775, which makes them 1 year older than the independent United States of America. This is looking down from the top level, just before I climb out at the top to admire the view. And here we are, at the top of the bell tower. You can just see the sea in the distance. There's the castle and the guns that we saw earlier. Remember that the land in front of us wasn't there when the church was originally built. The harbour came right up to the castle walls. So that's a very brief look at some of the sights in historic Rye. In the next video, we'll be walking around the land that was once the harbour. This is now a nature reserve. Why not come and join us? If you've enjoyed watching, please give us a thumbs up. And don't forget to subscribe to the Country Traveller channel. Thanks for watching.